It's 431 Leland Live, talking at NM5. If you're looking for a place to change how you handle your nest egg, let's just put it this way. We're heading into some uncharted waters this year economically, no doubt about that, especially after the last few days. You need professional advice on how to make your money work for you, how to watch it grow, how to let it pay you back one day. Let me suggest to you my buddy Danny Knowles. He's a patriot. He's a veteran. He's a great guy, does all the right things, and I grew up with him, so I can vouch for his character. He's a good man. And he's smart, and he knows his stuff, and he'll help you with whatever you've got. In fact, no matter what size nest egg you've been able to put together with your retirement plan, let Danny take a look. He's at the Knowles Group, N-O-L-E-S, theknowlesgroup.com, theknowlesgroup.com. 432, let me give you a lay of the land, and we'll get some more of these phone calls in here. First up, nightfall has now hit in D.C. It makes it a little harder to see, kind of get a scope on what's going on with all these protesters and if anything is escalating or de-escalating. Right now people are just kind of walking and meedling around, and it looks like that they have complete control of the Capitol back, both inside and outside at this point. A pretty good overwhelming force by the different agencies that have rolled in there to secure the Capitol. And so the arrests are starting to take place, and now we wait for the evidence. So who were these people? Who went into that building? Because we're starting to see some internet evidence that it wasn't just your typical church group that went to support the president. It was some really professionally trained activists of some stripe, and we'll get more information on that in the days to come after we find out who's been arrested. We actually don't even know the total number of people that got into the building, but it was a hell of a scene today, and something like I've never seen in my years of paying attention and again working in and out of that town. Okay, so let's do the phone calls, and wait a minute. I got our Congressman Gary Palmer's on the phone. I just happened to look over and see he's made it in this afternoon. I reached out to him very early in all this. Gary, the floor is yours. Tell me from the beginning what happened this afternoon. What was your experience?
Well, I was on the floor and I actually had walked over to speak to Jim Jordan, and I had written out a speech I was going to give, and they had already come in and said that there were disturbances outside, and then they came in and said the Capitol had been breached, and they wanted us to stay in place, and they were locking the doors in the gallery. You've been in there, you know, all the doors that go into the gallery and onto the floor.
Yeah.
And they got initially they were in the rotunda, and then they got into the hallway out between the statuary hall and the House chamber, and they got into the speaker's lobby, which, you know, is on the back side of the chamber, and they wanted us to get the gas mask. There's gas mask under each seat, and I could hear the tear gas going off outside, and then they wanted us all to basically take cover behind the chairs, which I don't know anybody, I only saw a couple of people do that. And they got some control of the outside of the chamber, and then wanted us all leave, and so they got us out of the Capitol. But I could smell the tear gas. I never put the mask on, but I could smell it.
Did y'all just take the tunnels and go to other buildings, or how'd you get out of there? Unless that's a security question.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally understandable. I remember that stuff. Yeah. So at any point, Gary, did you fearful? Did you know what was going on? Were you sure about who these people were?
Well, we had heard that there were different groups involved, some maybe dressed like they were supporting one side that they really didn't support. But the bottom line of this is this behavior is inexcusable. A young woman got shot today.
Yeah.
And she's in critical condition. And I just, this is not how we solve our problems. You know, I'm willing to go to the floor and fight for the right of people to have a fair and honest election, a constitutional election. I didn't need anybody to come here and try to destroy the Capitol. Okay? We were making our case. And There's no question we were going to lose the vote. We're in the minority. But that's why you go vote. You know, there are going to be a lot of people in Georgia who regret not going to vote before the tenure of these two guys that got elected is over.
How bad does it hurt the cause? We
all have a responsibility.
And I got an instinct on this, but I know that today I was listening. I think it was Jim Jordan had started with his objection to Arizona, and y'all had a series of speakers, including yourself. They were going to make those concerns known. It was all going to be on national TV. In my mind, the mainstream media that's ignored these election challenges would be faced with having to at least listen to that debate before the vote, win or lose. But you never got there because of this chaos and this stupidity. And so now all that's on hold. How does it hurt your message, even if you get to go back on the floor tonight to try to make the case?
Well, after tonight, I don't know how many people are all that interested in the fact that these states had unconstitutional elections. I don't know how many people, you know, we've got people who have a media podium now, have a platform to attack our arguments because of what happened today, rather than us having that platform as we were having to lay out what's wrong with the entire election system in the country. It's a violation, and this is kind of nerdy, but people need to look this up. It's a violation of Article 1, Section 4. It's a violation of Article 2, Section 1. And some of our own guys on our side have differences of opinion, and I understand that. But Mike Johnson, Louisiana, and I have worked very closely on this. We're the ones who put together the amicus brief that was attached to the Texas suit. That was not our intent to attach it to that. That was the quickest vehicle we had to get to the Supreme Court. We based our arguments today on these constitutional principles. We're citing Supreme Court decisions that reaffirm the right of Congress when there's a question about the legitimacy of election to intervene. These are all constitutional questions, and you know this. You've served with a member of Congress. We have to maintain the Constitution if we hope to have maintain this country. And the other thing is, and I got to explain this yesterday in our conference meeting, is that it's not only right and fitting for Congress to do this, but we have a system of checks and balances, and the legislative branch, even though some people say they're all co-equal, that's not true. The legislative branch is the preeminent branch, and we're not subservient to the Supreme Court or to the executive branch, and they're not subservient to us, and we're not subservient to state legislatures, and it doesn't violate any federalism principle for us to say that the Constitution vests in the legislature sole authority to make changes to election law and no one else. And when you do that, it's unconstitutional. And it's part of your responsibility as a member of Congress to exercise this check so that we maintain the balance and maintain the integrity of our elections so that people believe that they actually are in part of a process to select our leaders, including our president.
I heard Ted Cruz earlier today in one of his speeches, and I don't know if it was were y'all in joint session when the senators were speaking? Because I was listening. I was not watching. I was listening in, and he proposed some third path of a commission based on which race was it? 1877
1876.
Yeah, 76.
Yeah, 1876.
Was it Rutherford Hayes? Who was in that race? I'm losing.
Rutherford B. Hayes, and I forget the other guy's
name.
name.
And so he proposed a commission, suspend all this whole thing for 10 days, 5 House members, 5 Senate members, and 5 Supreme Court members, which was the formula then. And it sounded like, at least somebody turning the wheels, coming up with something, and then boom, all this happened, and you never even had a debate over that idea.
Well, and actually what happens, you meet in joint session, and they open the first batch of ballots. It was Alabama, no protest, no objection. Alaska, no objection. Arizona, and then Congressman Paul Gosar objected to Arizona, and they said, is there a senator who also objects? And Ted Cruz objected.
Yeah.
At that point, you go into recess, and the two houses go to their respective chambers, and you begin the debate. And we'd gone through several speeches when all this started happening. We tried to continue it, and it was there was some hotheads making comments, and we needed to remind the speaker that the House was not in order. You know how all that goes down.
Mm-hmm.
that whoever decided that this was the way to impact the future of the country made a horrible decision.
Just insane. Gary, what happens tonight now?
Great work to do.
What happens? Okay, so y'all sitting around waiting to get back on the floor. You don't know. You just don't know.
No.
Do you think the argument for the challenge kind of lost some wind, and they're going to ram a vote through and go home, or what will we do tonight?
I don't know. I think that those of us who sincerely believe that that this is a constitutional crisis and that the future of the country is at stake, and I'm talking about the peaceful future of the country. Leland, you know this as well as I do. Our foreign adversaries, our foreign enemies, have been part of a disinformation campaign to stir this kind of stuff up. They've been doing it for years. Our domestic enemies, the same thing. And, we had hoped that 2021 would be a better year than 2020 and started out that way. But I do think, back to the basis of your question, where do we go from here? I think we've got to have a platform where we can educate the American people. And it's not just making sure that to have a constitutional election, because constitutional election is worthless to people who don't care enough to go vote. Only about 76%, on average 76% of the voting age population who's eligible is even registered to vote.
Have they given you,
at the same time,
have they given you any guidance to as to when you might get back on the floor tonight, or are y'all just in a complete holding pattern?
We're all being held in different places in secure locations.
Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate your time tonight. I know there's a lot going on around you, and we appreciate you being responsive. It's crazy because you were also part of the baseball field shooting incident, which was other chaos involving our Congress people, and here you are in the middle of both of those, Gary, and I've known you for a couple of decades. I never thought we'd be having these conversations with each other on the radio.
No, I didn't either. But, Leland, I really appreciate you. You're the first one that I've talked to in the media. And it's because of my very high regard, first of all, for you as a professional, but also as a friend. So.
I appreciate it, Gary. Thanks for your time tonight. We wish you the best, and keep in touch. Call back if something goes down and you want to tell us about.
Okay.
All right. There's our congressman from the 6th District here in Birmingham, Representative Gary Palmer, dealing with just a very unusual situation. Again, I can't help but relate back to things I remember from back in those days of working with Congressmen when 9/11 happened and how the members were scattered. Nobody knew where anybody was. There was chaos. It was hard to make any sense of it. And so here we are again with Congress at the center of this.